Bonjour, M. Champagne, ça va bien? M. Poilievre dit que vous êtes dans une alliance woke avec le NPD et radicale. Qu'est-ce que vous répondez à ça?
C'est ridicule. Je veux dire, écoutez, il n'y a pas personne qui pense comme ça. Je pense que la coalition, d'abord, s'il y en a une, c'est pour faire avancer l'économie, c'est pour s'occuper des gens. Je veux dire, toute la discussion qu'on a eue ici dans les derniers jours, c'est le thème principal, c'est comment on sert les Canadiens, comment on a une économie qui fonctionne. Vous savez, moi, je quitte ici, je m'en vais au Salon de Détroit, je serai en Californie après pour attirer des investissements. Le mot d'ordre, c'est l'économie, l'économie, l'économie. Vous savez, je pense que les gens à la maison doivent s'habituer. On va entendre toutes sortes de choses pendant les 2-3 prochaines années. On connaît le style de M. Poilievre, c'est des solutions simples à des problèmes relativement complexes. Nous, on va continuer de focaliser sur ce qu'on fait de mieux, c'est-à-dire faire avancer l'économie, parce que vous savez, la seule chose qui préoccupe les gens aujourd'hui, là, c'est combien ça coûte à l'épicerie, combien ça coûte quand ils vont mettre de l'essence, combien ça coûte à la fin du mois, combien leur hypothèque coûte. Et la préoccupation première, c'est de baisser le coût de la vie, évidemment, pour les gens, pour s'assurer que les gens aient plus d'argent à la fin de la semaine, à la fin du mois. C'est ça la priorité. Vous savez, le reste, la rhétorique... Écoutez, ça fait 8 ans qu'on le voit en chambre, nous autres, là. Vous comprendrez qu'on a déjà vu de la rhétorique, mais l'important, c'est de s'occuper des vrais problèmes. Les vrais problèmes, c'est la fin de la semaine, c'est la fin du mois pour les Canadiens.
Is your party to move more to the centre to take on Poilievre, and what do you say to his claims it's a radical coalition?
Listen, I think no Canadians would believe in these labels. I think we have to get used to that. That's the kind of politics he wants to bring in our country. The focus here has been really on Canadians, on middle class, making sure that, you know, what Canadians care about, it's not this kind of political rhetoric. We've seen that for 7 years from him. You know, I sit in front of him. What people want to see is who's proposing solution, concrete solution for the end of the week, the end of the month. What people care about is how much it costs for grocery, how much it costs for gas, how much it costs to live now with inflation. And our job is to make sure that we lower the cost for Canadians. That's why just after that I'm at the Detroit Auto Show. I'll be in San Francisco trying to bring investment in the country, onshoring investments in our country. That's what matters at the end of the day for Canadians.
Does that mean moving more to the centre?
Well, I think these labels, you know where I stand. I firmly believe that we need to have the means of our ambitions, and that starts with a very strong and healthy economy. That's what I've been doing. You saw the investments we have, and trust me, there's much more to come. When I leave there, you'll see there's going to be good news coming.
But are you vulnerable to attacks like that when they say you're woke, you're out of touch with average Canadians?
I would say, listen, what you saw this week and what you saw in the last few days is a team which is fully committed to work on three things: the economy, the economy, and the economy. That's what matters to Canadians. And certainly as the industry minister, trust me, you've seen us what we did in pharmaceutical, you'll see us what we've done in aerospace, you'll see in the automotive sector. At the end of the day, who's creating jobs? Is it the leader of the opposition or is it the government? I'd ask a question to him. Who's creating jobs in this country? I can assure you when we come back from these meetings and the investment we've seen, more is coming. Just watch who's creating jobs in this country.
So you don't think you're too woke?
I certainly don't believe I'm woke, trust me. And no one in my family believes that either.
Monsieur Poilievre dit que si vous faites une annonce sur le coût de la vie aujourd'hui, c'est un peu grâce à lui. Dans le fond, c'est lui qui a mis ça à l'ordre du jour. Qu'est-ce que vous répondez à ça?
Comme la plupart des gens le savent, cette annonce-là était prévue avant l'arrivée de M. Poilievre. Le décès de la reine Elisabeth II a fait en sorte qu'on a dû retarder cette annonce-là, mais ça n'a rien à voir avec M. Poilievre.
On the woke thing, do you think that you're vulnerable to attacks like that from Mr. Poilievre when he says you're too woke, you're not in tune with the needs of Canadians who are hurting?
Frankly, I don't even know what it means to be woke. I'm working to serve Canadians, and Canadians have asked us for 3 elections in a row to do more and to do it faster when it comes to fighting climate change, when it comes to helping communities have better air, better water, access to more public transit, more electric vehicles, more bike paths. That's exactly what we're doing.
What do you make when Poilievre... Cette réponse en français, vous dites woke...
Sincèrement, parle de woke, je ne sais pas trop de quoi il parle. Moi, je suis là pour servir la population canadienne qui nous ont demandé, élection après élection, d'en faire plus en matière de changement climatique pour que dans nos communautés, on ait une air, une eau de meilleure qualité, qu'on ait plus de transports en commun, accès à plus de pistes cyclables, plus de voitures électriques et d'électrification de nos transports. C'est exactement ce que nous faisons.
Mr. Poilievre said his environment plan will be based on technology and not taxes. Given that the U.S. now has an ambitious plan that's not based on carbon pricing like Canada's, is that possible?
Well, first, I mean, I'm super happy with what's happening in the U.S. with the Inflation Act. And $300 billion is a lot of money, but on a per capita basis, we're doing 3 times more than the Americans just on investment. We're at $109 billion of investment. If you compare the size of our 2 economies, that means we're doing 3 times more just on investment. They're not doing carbon pricing in the U.S., but we're seeing around the world more and more countries putting in place carbon pricing systems, including China, the European Union, a number of states around the world, including U.S. states. To tackle climate change and to think that we can get there just by using carrots and no sticks, we won't get there. Of course, we need technology, and we're massively investing in technology. In fact, no government has invested more in technology than we have. But technology alone won't get us there. Merci. Thank you.
Mr. Poilievre says that the party is announcing more measures to tackle affordability because of him. What do you think about that?
I think the government's been working on measures to deal with affordability for a long, long time.
Why wait until the fall to announce this? Why not earlier when people are really struggling right now?
Obviously, inflation is a huge factor in every Canadian's life right now, and I know the government's been working very, very hard on measures to deal with affordability, and we'll see more later today, but I think we have a great package.
Qu'est-ce que vous répondez à Pierre Poilievre qui vous dit que vous êtes dans une alliance woke radicale avec le NPD?
M. Poilievre va lancer toutes sortes de flèches et ça va être notre travail de nous concentrer sur les Canadiens.
Il dit que c'est à cause de lui que vous faites une annonce sur le coût de la vie aujourd'hui.
Oui, mais je peux assurer M. Poilievre et l'ensemble des Canadiens que nous travaillons, nous sommes à l'œuvre et nous savons que le quotidien, les fins du mois de tous les Canadiens sont difficiles et le gouvernement va être là pour répondre et j'ai hâte de voir ça aujourd'hui.
Mais il se donne le crédit, lui, là.
Ouais. M. Poilievre va dire toutes sortes de choses.
You guys are getting basically criticized on both sides, from the NDP and the Conservatives, about not doing enough on affordability. What do you think? Just face this way if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'll be right here.
Can you repeat your question?
For sure. Listen, today we're expecting an affordability announcement for your government. Everyone's been talking about it here at your caucus, but you know the NDP and the Conservatives are both basically going to take credit, saying finally the Liberals are doing something. What do you think about that?
That's what oppositions do. What governments do is act, and we've been working very, very hard all summer on a great package that I know that Canadians will want to hear more about today.
Well, how many Canadians will be helped, do you think?
Oh, I think, look, Canadians we know are coping with higher costs, with inflation, and we're going to be there to respond to that.
Mr. Blair, how are you feeling this morning after yesterday's news in Toronto?
It's tragic, and I know how difficult it is for the policing community and for the chief of police, but particularly for his family and his community. The loss of an officer in any circumstances is tragic, and these look particularly tragic, and it appears to just simply have been an ambush because he's a cop.
What's your message to Toronto and everyone grieving this with you right now?
Well, it's a reminder, I think, of the risks that our officers face for us every single day when they go out to do their job of keeping us all safe, and you know the sacrifice of that officer, his family. I think it should be grieved by the entire city and will be.
Sir, I see you wearing your Toronto Police golf shirt. Did you pick it out this morning for that reason, or I'm just?
I was with the Toronto Police for such a long time. Darn near everything I own is logoed for the Toronto Police. But quite frankly, they're very much in my thoughts and my heart today. I know what it's like for the police community all too well, unfortunately.
You reached out to anyone that you still know on the force?
I talked to some friends, but I've not yet had an opportunity to speak to the chief.
I apologize, but it's such a random act. Is this the fear of the job when there are random acts that just can't?
It's one of the risks that comes with the job of wearing that uniform and the uniform and all it symbolizes. But the job is to be out there to protect the public, and you know the man was out doing his job when his life was taken. Anyways,
thank you very much.
Mr. Poilievre gave a statement in the House of Commons foyer. He wasn't going to take questions, and some journalists asked for 2 questions. He laid out sort of his economic statement again. Is there anything you've heard about that you want to comment about it or not?
We obviously spent this retreat, as we spent our cabinet retreat, very focused on the economy, focused both on the immediate challenges Canada is facing, but also the longer term opportunities. And those are really tremendous today. I think we are in a new era following the Russian invasion of Ukraine, when there's going to be a real focus on friendshoring, on democracies wanting to build their supply chains through other democracies, and that presents tremendous opportunities for Canada. So we talked about that, and we also talked about the immediate challenges that Canada and Canadians are facing. You heard the Prime Minister's announcement about what we're doing right now to help Canadians with those challenges.
Just before Bill Curry has a question for you, I'm sure. Just thinking for regular folks in your riding, living in apartments, renting condo spaces, trying to pay a bill, what is your direct message to them in both languages, if you could? We're living at the strategic level, and Mr. Poilievre is living at the tactical level, so what can you do?
Well, let me tell you the level our government is living at, which is supporting Canadians today with the challenges we face, and also having a plan for the future. I think we have to walk and chew gum, and I think Canadians are really, really smart, and I think that's the approach that the vast majority of Canadians take in their own lives they want the country to take. What do I say to the people in my community who are struggling? I would say to them that the measures that the Prime Minister announced today, with extra support for people who rent and are struggling with housing affordability, with a doubling for 6 months of the GST tax credit, that's really meaningful support for the most vulnerable Canadians. And, you know, I do talk to a lot of people in my own community. Whenever I go out for a run, people, it's like canvassing, people stop me and share with me their concerns. And I know Canadians are concerned about fiscal responsibility as well. They understand that it's really important today for the government not to pour fuel on the flames of inflation. And that definitely has been our approach. Canada has the lowest deficit in the G7. And we're very mindful of striking that balance, of being fiscally responsible while supporting the most vulnerable. Et en français, notre approche, c'est une approche équilibrée. D'un côté, nous savons que c'est la responsabilité du gouvernement, c'est la responsabilité de notre pays d'appuyer les gens les moins nantis, les plus vulnérables. Et on a fait ça, on va continuer de faire ça. En même temps, nous comprenons qu'aujourd'hui, avec l'autre niveau de l'inflation, c'est un moment quand on doit prendre une approche du côté fiscal responsable, et ce qu'on a fait en avril avec le budget, et c'est ce qu'on continuera de faire.
Thank you. I have a question for my colleague, Chrystia. You had a story this morning where you saw about the Fiscal program, the small business loan program. You have documents where government officials were saying about $5 billion of that could be unrecoverable, and starting to do the process of getting those loans back. Just your thoughts on that. CFIB is concerned that they're already talking about trying to collect this money, and the fact that it seems like a lot of it could be uncollected.
So I'm really sorry I haven't seen the specific story. I've been really focused on spending time with my caucus colleagues and on spending time with people in St. Andrews. But I can say more broadly about the CEBA program and about Canadian small businesses. One of the things that we understood very, very early on when COVID first struck was that Canada was going to have to put in place extraordinary measures to get through this pandemic. We did something that I don't think a country in history has ever done. And our peers, the wealthy industrialized nations around the world, did the same thing. We literally shut down the economy. With hindsight, I am very confident we did the right thing. And there was actually a study over the summer led by David Naylor and a couple of other academics. They found that if Canada had had the mortality rate of the United States, 70,000 additional Canadians would have died. That's more than the population of Fredericton. So I think all Canadians, like, it was very hard those 2 years, but I think we should all remember that that saved at least 70,000 lives. What it did mean, though, for Canada's small businesses is we asked them to shut down to save their parents and their grandparents, and my parents and grandparents. Well, I don't have grandparents anymore, but certainly my parents and aunts and uncles. And that was an extraordinary thing we asked them to do. It was entirely appropriate for us to provide them with the support they needed to get through, with the CEBA loans, with the wage subsidy, with rent support. And not only was it the right thing to do, but it was the economically smart thing to do. You guys are asking me a lot of questions about inflation. I don't hear you asking me questions about economic growth. I don't hear you asking me questions about a lack of jobs in Canada. I don't hear you asking me questions about boarded up main streets across the country. And you're not asking those questions because of the excellence and entrepreneurial spirit and just resilience of Canadian businesses, and because we provided them with the support they needed to get through. So I'm really glad we put the measures that we put in place.
Can I ask you a question about the deficit? I haven't had a chance to talk to you since the fiscal update, which had the first quarter results showing a $10 billion surplus. So people are wondering, well, what does this mean for your budget projection of a $52 billion deficit? Economists think a smaller deficit would be good, and they're concerned that the government might spend it. So now we're seeing some new spending today, and that'll probably raise some concern. So I guess since the fiscal update, the quarterly numbers don't extrapolate, could you do a little bit of extrapolation?
No. I am not going to reveal new financial data on behalf of the government, but I'm glad you asked the question, because I think it's important for Canadians to recognize that, as I said when I tabled the budget in April, we recognized this was a time that Canada needed fiscal responsibility. We recognized in April that inflation was elevated, and the job of the government was to show restraint and not to pour fuel on the flames of inflation. We did that, and the monthly surplus that you've just asked about, Bill, is a proof point of our fiscal responsibility. When it comes to the measures that were announced today, those are fiscally responsible too. This is, yes, support that the most vulnerable Canadians need, but it is very, very targeted. The incremental cost of the measures announced today, the housing, the dental, and the GST, is $3.2 billion. Now that is real money, but I think that if you compare that support with spending we've seen in other countries, you will continue to conclude that Canada is pursuing a really fiscally responsible course. And you can see that when you look at deficits across the G7. Ours is the lowest, and that is very intentional. And that's going to help Canadians get through, the Canadian economy get through the next few really challenging months. OK, merci beaucoup. À la prochaine.